Jules Bianchi was more than just a rising star. He was a driver born for greatness, living life on the edge of control, chasing a dream in a world where seconds define legacies. But on one rain-soaked day at the Japanese Grand Prix, that dream turned into a nightmare. As a typhoon battered the Suzuka Circuit, visibility vanished, conditions worsened, and in a matter of moments, the sport witnessed one of its darkest, most haunting tragedies. A crash so violent it would change Formula One forever. What really happened in those critical minutes? What warnings were missed? What decisions sealed his fate? This is more than just a story of a crash. It's the journey of Jules Bianchi. From a young racer with Ferrari in his future, to a symbol of heartbreak and hard lessons the sport could no longer ignore. This is the story of talent, risk, and the price of speed. This is the story of Jules Bianchi. From the very beginning, Jules Bianchi seemed destined to chase speed. Born on August 3, 1989 in Nice, France, Jules grew up in the shadow of legends. His grandfather, Mauro Bianchi, was a motorsport veteran. His granduncle, Lucien Bianchi, had raced in 19 Formula One Grand Prix, even winning the 1968 24 Hours of Le Mans, before tragically losing his life the very next year while testing for the same race. That history loomed over Jules like a ghost and a guide. His father owned a go-kart track, and by the time Jules could walk, he was already trying to drive. He got his first kart at age 3. By 5, he was racing, and by teenage years, he was making seasoned competitors nervous. He didn't just have skill, he had that rare, unteachable instinct, knowing exactly where the limit was and exactly when to push beyond it. By 2004, Jules had already claimed second place in both the French and European junior karting championships, and at just 18 years old, he entered the Formula Renault 2.0 series in France. The result? 5 wins, a championship title, and his first taste of serious attention in the paddock. But he didn't stop there. In 2008, Jules joined the Formula 3 Euro Series with ART Grand Prix, the same team that had propelled Lewis Hamilton to stardom, and Jules delivered. He won the prestigious Masters of F3 and finished 3rd overall in the championship. That's when Ferrari came calling. Jules was chosen as the first ever recruit to Ferrari's newly launched Young Driver Academy, a program designed to train and mold the next generation of Formula One champions. In Ferrari's eyes, Jules wasn't just a prospect. He was a future world champion. His path was laid out in red. He tested with Ferrari, then was loaned to Force India as a reserve driver in 2012, gaining valuable F1 experience during practice sessions. 1 year later, he made his full Formula One debut with the underdog team Marussia, a car many doubted could even finish a race, let alone score points. But then came Monaco 2014. At the most prestigious and unforgiving street circuit in the world, Jules Bianchi finished 9th. It was the first points finish in Marussia's history, and for many it felt like watching the beginning of something special. He was calm under pressure, precise in traffic, and hungry. That single race may have changed the trajectory of his career forever. By late 2014, with whispers that Fernando Alonso might leave Ferrari, Jules Bianchi was widely seen as the heir apparent, and he was ready. In interviews, he said plainly, "I feel I have the experience. I want this. I've worked for it since I was a child." But Formula One isn't a sport of guarantees. It's a sport where everything can change in a second, with a single turn, a single error, or a single gust of wind. 3 days after that interview, Jules would climb into his Marussia for the Japanese Grand Prix. And what happened on that track would change Formula One forever. October 5th, 2014, Suzuka Circuit, Japan. The air was thick with tension. Typhoon Fanaphone loomed ominously over the racetrack, and visibility was deteriorating fast. But in Formula One, the show rarely stops. As the grid lined up for the Japanese Grand Prix, teams debated, was it too dangerous to race? The lights went out anyway. From the first lap, chaos brewed. Rain hammered the tarmac, turning Suzuka's iconic S-curves into a minefield of gripless black. Teams scrambled to make strategy calls, drivers tiptoed through turns, and standing waters snaked across the racing line like hidden tripwires. By lap 43, Adrian Sutil lost control of his Sauber at Dunlop Curve, a high-speed left-hander notorious for punishing the smallest misjudgment in the wet. He spun off and slammed into the barriers. Fortunately, he walked away. Race control dispatched a 6.5-ton recovery crane onto the runoff area to retrieve the wrecked Sauber. It wasn't the first time such a vehicle had been used mid-race, but in these conditions, it was a decision that would soon be questioned around the world. As protocol dictated, double yellow flags were waved at the scene, signaling that drivers must slow down and be prepared to stop. But the rain hadn't eased, the sun was setting, and visibility continued to drop. Then came Jules Bianchi. He had passed the same section of track just one lap earlier. Now, as he approached again, his Marussia hit the exact same slick patch that had caught out Sutil. The car aquaplaned, suddenly and violently, leaving Jules a passenger. In the space of 2 seconds, he veered off track at over 130 kilometers an hour. He braked, the front tires locked, he turned, the car didn't respond. And then, silence. Jules' Marussia slammed directly into the side of the recovery crane. The force was so catastrophic that it lifted the 6.5-ton vehicle off the ground and dropped Sutil's suspended car back onto the circuit. Bianchi's car struck the crane at a shallow angle, tearing through the upper structure of the Marussia, ripping off the roll hoop, the airbox, and devastating the cockpit. His helmet absorbed a direct impact from the crane's underbelly. A human skull is not meant to take that kind of force. Track marshals rushed to his side. He was unresponsive. The radio was silent. He had suffered what doctors would later call a diffuse axonal injury, a form of brain trauma so severe that most patients never regain consciousness. Jules was taken by ambulance, the weather too severe for a helicopter, on a 32-minute journey to the Mie General Medical Center in Yokkaichi. There, he underwent emergency brain surgery and was placed in intensive care. For the rest of the night, Formula One held its breath. In the following days, more details emerged, and each one painted a clearer, more troubling picture. Marussia's car, it turned out, used a brake-by-wire system incompatible with the fail-safe engine cutoff protocol designed to prevent drivers from accelerating during a braking failure. This meant that when Jules lost control and tried to brake, the car didn't shut down, it kept pushing forward. Even worse, according to the FIA's final report, Jules did not slow down enough for the double yellow flags. He had likely been distracted, trying to avoid water, trying to steer, or perhaps simply reacting on instinct in conditions that had already become borderline undrivable. But the most chilling realization? Had Jules lifted off the throttle? Had he not tried to correct the spin? Had the car's failsafe engaged properly? He might have survived. But in those 2 fateful seconds, none of those variables lined up. Instead, what should have been a minor off-track moment became the most catastrophic crash in Formula One since Ayrton Senna's death in 1994. Jules Bianchi was just 25 years old, and now all anyone could do was wait. For days after the crash, the world of Formula One held its breath. Jules Bianchi lay in critical condition, unresponsive, his body now caught in a second race, one not against rival drivers but against time. Doctors diagnosed a diffuse axonal injury, one of the most devastating forms of traumatic brain damage. In medical terms, it meant that his brain had shifted inside his skull with such force that the neural connections were torn apart. Few patients survive it. Fewer still wake up. Jules was placed in a medically induced coma, a state meant to give his brain the best chance to heal. The initial updates were sparse. Stable, but critical. There was hope, but no promises. On October 13th, his father released a quiet but sobering update. Jules is fighting. We believe in him. Back in France, fans lit candles and held vigils. In Japan, the crash sparked a heated debate. Why was a tractor on the circuit during an active race? Why had the race resumed under such dangerous conditions? Why wasn't a safety car deployed sooner? Even Formula One legends voiced their concern. Sebastian Vettel, visibly shaken, skipped media interviews. Felipe Massa choked back tears, telling reporters, "This is the worst race of my life." As weeks passed, the motorsport world watched and waited. November brought a flicker of hope. Jules was flown back to Nice, closer to home, where his family could remain by his bedside. He was no longer in a coma, technically, but he wasn't awake either. His father, Philippe, said, "We talk to him every day. His mother, his sister, his brother, his girlfriend. We are there. He sometimes moves. His hand will tremble. Is it a reflex or something more? We don't know. It was agony in slow motion, a hopeful horror. For over 9 months, Jules clung to life in a silent, unmoving fight. And then, on July 17, 2015, the battle came to an end. At 25 years old, Jules Bianchi died. He became the first Formula One driver to lose his life as the result of a Grand Prix incident since Ayrton Senna in 1994. His death shocked a sport that had prided itself on its post-Senna safety era, a sport that had believed such tragedy was behind it. At his funeral in Nice, drivers from across generations arrived to pay their respects. Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Nico Rosberg, and a young Charles Leclerc, Jules's godson, stood shoulder to shoulder, honoring a driver whose career had ended far too soon, but whose impact would never fade. Formula One responded, not with silence, but with change. Jules Bianchi's death was not in vain. In the wake of the tragedy, Formula One made sweeping changes. The virtual safety car system was introduced to prevent cars from racing through danger zones. And just a few years later, in 2018, the Halo, a titanium head protection device, became mandatory. At first, it was mocked. But when Romain Grosjean survived a fiery crash in Bahrain, it was clear. The Halo was saving lives. Lives Jules never had the chance to see saved. Car number 17 was retired in his honor. And for his godson, Charles Leclerc, Jules remains more than family. He's the reason he's on the grid. Jules's story is no longer just about loss. It's about change, legacy, and the silent sacrifices that make racing safer for everyone who dares to chase speed. Jules Bianchi was just 25 years old. A rising star with a Ferrari future, extinguished in a moment that shook the entire world of Formula One. And while the sport has moved on faster, safer, stronger, his absence still lingers in every turn, every silence before the lights go out. But Jules wasn't the only one to lose everything while doing what he loved. If you think this story was tragic, wait until you hear what happened to motocross legend Cloud Tota, a paralyzed rider who fought his way back onto the bike, only to meet an end so horrific it changed action sports safety forever.